Yes, a lot of Newcastle fans might be getting quite excited who might be coming in the January transfer window as it gets a little bit closer. But it's also worth talking about who needs to go out in order for players to come in. So I'm going to be looking at who I'd like to see leave the club in January to make room for more new players to keep growing under this fantastic season we've seen so far. So stick around. Welcome back to Black and White Banter, Newcastle fans, and can I just say it, a very Christmassy Black and White Banter. I almost feel like I'm doing a speech on Christmas Day like the Queen used to, or the King will do this year. It is Christmas, and Merry Christmas to anyone watching this video. Had to get the tree in, didn't I? Had to get the tree in this time of year. If you are new to Black and White Banter, Newcastle fans, please give us one of these, just a little thumbs up, even if you haven't watched any of these videos yet or any Black and White Banter stuff before. It goes a long way and it doesn't take you very much. And please get Black and White Banter across all social media: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and TikTok. There's content on there every single day. And whack that subscribe. If you like my voice, you like my face, you'd like to maybe hear more opinions, hit that subscribe button as well. That'll be fantastic. So as I mentioned at the start of this video, the January transfer window is getting a little bit closer. Yes, we're all watching the World Cup, but I think we all starting to look to the January transfer window now. The rumours are starting to circulate. Is Eddie Howe going to go back after James Maddison? He's the main one that's being linked. Are we going to strengthen in numbers? Is there maybe only going to be one player come in? Is he going to bring some youth developments, sign some players for the future? There's lots of different question marks floating around in the newspapers. But what I'd like to focus on today is who I think needs to leave the football club and may leave as well. Not just who I also think might, in order for players to come in, because it's very important. There's a lot of squad players in there that need to come out if we are going to keep adding players to the team and also balance the books as well from a financial point of view for the club. So first up for me, and he's being quite heavily linked at the moment, which makes total sense with a move away from Newcastle, is Ryan Fraser. Ryan Fraser for me is a footballer who I thought was a fantastic free transfer when he came into the football club under he who shall not be named, our ex-manager. And it just hasn't really worked for him, has it? He's had so many injuries. Don't forget, Newcastle fans, Ryan Fraser had a record at one point as being the third highest assister behind Mo Salah and Kevin De Bruyne not too long ago in terms of Premier League assists over a certain amount of time. He had a great relationship with Bournemouth and Callum Wilson, and we were all quite excited to be bringing in this player who cost nothing, who could add a bit of pace to the wings, had a decent cross on him as we saw at Bournemouth, and could maybe link up with the England strikers again and ignite that partnership between the two of them. And it's just never worked. He's had injury after injury after injury. When he has come back into the team, yes, he's full of running, very similar to what Miguel Almiron's been for most of his career at Newcastle. I've never seen Ryan Fraser for me would fall into a top three players who just never stop. He's like a little bulldog. But quality, goals, assists, it's just never worked out. And Eddie Howe's clearly not seeing much in him because he's actually fallen down the pecking order now. He's got St. Maximin obviously in front of him. He's got Almiron in front of him. He's got Jacob Murphy, which a lot of people at the start of the season, myself included, would never have said would have been the case, that Jacob Murphy was further in that pecking order, but he is. And you could even argue as well he's got Elliot Anderson ahead of him in those areas as well, because Elliot Anderson is getting those minutes under Eddie Howe, who obviously sees him as a very, very promising youngster, as we all do. And then you've got players who can play on that left-hand side, maybe a bit less orthodox, a bit more like unorthodox, like Joe Linton. He can play on the left side of that three. Joe Willock, if needed, can play on the left side of a three. And I don't see him getting many minutes. Even in the cup competitions, we've got Bournemouth in the cup shortly. I don't see him getting much game time. For me, Eddie Howe probably sees Ryan Fraser now as an impact sub to really graft his bollocks off if maybe we hold in a win. I don't see him being the player that Eddie Howe will bring on in the hope of changing the game, because he's shown nothing to us Newcastle fans to suggest that. But yeah, I would miss his work rate, but he's someone who needs to leave. He needs game time. I still think he maybe can ignite his career if he stays injury-free, and it's Southampton who've been linked. So there'd be a transfer fee there, some money coming into the football club, but he, for me, with the players he's got in front of him, would have to be the first one out. Next up for me would be Matt Ritchie. That's probably the most obvious player that you would expect to leave the football club in January. Matt Ritchie's been an absolutely fantastic servant for Newcastle. He's helped us through that championship when he first came into the football club, winning the championship at the first time of asking to come straight back up under Benitez. He's scored crucial goals for us. He's been a leader on the pitch for us. I've never liked him at left back, and that's where my love affair with Matt Ritchie started to drop off, not through any fault of his. I was just getting sick of seeing him played at left back as a wing back under Steve Bruce. Said I wouldn't mention his name, but there we go. He had no defensive quality at all in that position, and if you're going to play him further forward, he just lacks that pace. Yes, he's got a decent left peg on him, and he still probably does. If he came on to play for Newcastle now, he might get some game time in Saudi Arabia. He does still have a decent left peg, I've got no doubts about it. He's a huge character in the dressing room. He's a fiery Scot. We've seen him kick corner flags into Newcastle fans' bollocks before when we've won. As I said, you know, I've got so many great Matt Ritchie memories. He's winner against Man United at home at St James's Park. He's winner against Arsenal at St James's Park. So many. Really, what a servant for Newcastle. But I think it's his time to go. He's another player you would want off the books. He's not getting in that Newcastle team under any circumstances. There'd have to be a freak injury crisis at Newcastle for Matt Ritchie to come in, even in the cup games. So that's another one you could maybe command a small fee for from a club, maybe Premier League, but I would maybe assume sort of for more than likely maybe top tier Championship. I think Matt Ritchie could do a better job at now. Because of that pace, it's dropped off, and because, in my opinion, he has no defensive quality in him. Position-wise, he got found out too many times for us. So that would be one I'd be sad to see leave, but one I think needs to happen, and one that I think will happen as long as there's enough interest. And next up would be a one that kind of plays with my heartstrings again a little bit, but Paul Dummett. Eddie Howe gave him a contract extension, which surprised a lot of people. A lot of people who've never been Paul Dummett fans, I know on social media, and friends of myself, weren't too happy about that. Maybe Eddie Howe might see him out until the summer. I personally believe that Eddie Howe kept him for that experience that he has of the dressing room. No one's been at Newcastle longer in that current squad than what Paul Dummett has, because he's come through the academy. He's seen so many managers. He's seen the club change in so many different ways, and it must be amazing for him as a Newcastle fan and a Newcastle kid to be part of what's happening at the moment. God, it must be so exciting for him. But he's not going to get any game time this season. Very, very little. Maybe a go in the cups. I think the last time he appeared for us was Tranmere. Don't hold me to that though, in the Carabao Cup. Could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure he played some of that game at left back. He didn't actually look very good in that game, if my memory serves me correctly. But if Eddie Howe and the board are serious about making changes and getting players out, I think Eddie Howe, as much as he offered him that 1 year contract, with Botman playing so well, Fabian Schär, you've also got Jamal Lewis to think about, which we'll touch on in a second. Paul Dummett might be one who's more likely to stay until the summer, but also I wouldn't lose any sleep over him if he left Newcastle in January. And yes, it'll be sad to see him go. It's always sad to see a Geordie leave the squad, someone who you've had a connection with as a fan for so long because he's been a part of the club, but he's not part of this new project. Let's face it, Newcastle fans, these are just harsh realities that I'm coming out with. I don't even like saying some of them, to be honest, because Paul Dummett's like one of the lads, isn't he? But yeah, he would be someone who I would certainly add to that list again. Now, Jamal Lewis, I've just mentioned him in that sort of left-back area. I don't think Eddie Howe will get rid unless a left-back was to come in, purely because we don't have much cover in that area. Obviously, Dan Burn can play there, and he's been doing so fantastically well. Matt Targett hasn't put a foot wrong and was very unlucky to drop out because of Dan Burn. But then you've got Jamal Lewis, and Jamal Lewis, for me, is a very, very odd one. It's almost one of them bizarre situations since he signed for the football club. He was full of promise when he came in. Liverpool had been sniffing in previous years. We all thought we were getting a cracking young talent. For me, he's never looked very good, and that is me being brutally honest. When I've watched him play in the Cups, this is more last season before Eddie Howe came in. No aggression, no strength, very poor going forward. I remember being very frustrated at him last season in that run until we were knocked out by Brentford in the Carabao Cup, in games when we were up against it and balls were going in, but of such poor quality against low league opposition. I know he plays for Northern Ireland, but again, not the standard of player at Northern Ireland. That doesn't say too much. It's great that he plays internationally for his country, though. I don't know with Jamal Lewis. Is there a player in there? You would have to believe so, because of who was interested, the form that allowed us to sign him in the first place. But it's just similar to Ryan Fraser. It's never really worked out at Newcastle for Jamal Lewis. So that's someone who I think still has a lot to offer to the game, whether it is in the Championship or whether it is, your lower league, Premier League teams. I think he'd be lucky to get that sort of move based off the fact he's played no football hardly. But maybe a loan for Jamal Lewis could be a really, really good option. I think that's something that Eddie Howe might look to. And I know with loan deals, sometimes some of the wages can be covered by the team that they're playing for. Sometimes teams can pay a loan fee, but to get him off the books for half the season, I think would be a wise move from Eddie Howe. But that will all depend how he feels cover-wise. If we progress in the FA Cup, touch wood, if we progress in the League Cup, how he thinks our squad is looking in that left-back position. And left-back is an area we've been linked up with maybe strengthening. So we don't know what positions, if we are going to sign any players in January, that might be the top of the agenda. You could argue we do maybe need a more attacking left-back. Matt Targett isn't great going forward. Dan Burn, I don't even put him in that category of a left-back who's going to really offer much, like Matt Trippier would on the other side. So maybe Eddie Howe's looking to get that balance. I don't know. So Jamal Lewis, going further into midfield. I know I talked about Matt Ritchie. I kind of put him in the defensive category. Midfield, I guess, is a funny one because Ryan Fraser, again, I started with him. That would be the only standout player for me that would leave that midfield. You've got Joe Linton, of course, not Bruno, Willock. Shelvey still has a lot to offer in a Newcastle shirt, even though I don't think Shelvey is going to be a starter for this football club anymore. And I think he probably knows that deep down as well. Jacob Murphy has suddenly come into Eddie Howe's plans, and fair play to him. I would have said Jacob Murphy at the start of the season, but not anymore. He's offering something to us, and he's starting some really, really good performances. Some really good results. Fulham away, 4-0. Southampton away, 4-1. Jacob Murphy's had a role in these kind of fixtures. So then you move on to the forward positions. There's been talk about Chris Wood moving on. I just don't believe it at all. Isak's to come back, yes. Leeds might be sniffing around Chris Wood, but I still think Chris Wood, in Eddie Howe's head, has a part to play. If we are going to progress in the Cups, if we are going to keep getting stronger and stronger in the league and stay in that top 5, top 6 area, Chris Wood will still have some role to play in that. Whether it's an impact substitute for the last 5 minutes, whether it's a target man. And don't forget, Newcastle fans, Callum Wilson, who currently has a strain on England duty. I'm not even religious, but my God, make sure that's not a serious strain before the season restarts. Callum Wilson is still made of glass. I don't like to say it because I absolutely love the man. He's important to everything we do. So if Callum Wilson's hamstring goes ping, Chris Wood comes straight back into the picture. And to get a striking replacement in January, if we sold Chris Wood and looked to bring someone else in, is so difficult. That's an area in January nobody wants to sell. Who's going to want to sell a leading centre forward? Someone who's going to improve our team is obviously going to be very important to the team we're buying them from. So I don't think Chris Wood's going anywhere. So those would be my main players I would look to move out in January. It would be Jamal Lewis on loan, Matt Ritchie probably on a permanent deal somewhere, Paul Dummett on a permanent deal maybe somewhere as well, and then Ryan Fraser, as I talked about. You could maybe argue Javier Manquillo, but with Kraft injured for what looks like the whole season, I still think he's a massive part of Eddie Howe's plans, because Trippier got an injury last season, so he still has a role to play at right back. I don't like playing centre-backs playing right back. Fabian Schär's filled in there a couple of times. It's not my cup of tea at all. I think centre-back to right back, from what we've got at our disposal in the centre-back area, doesn't work. So please, Newcastle fans, let me know your thoughts on who you want out. This video's not about who you want in. I want to know who you'd not want out, because we have a soft spot for all players who play for this football club. Who you realistically think, under the current circumstances, if players are going to come in, who's going to make room for them by leaving the door? Let me know in the comments and I'll try and respond to every single one. If you've stuck around this long, Newcastle fans, please drop Black and White Banter, subscribe. Go on. The football season's back underway, and I've got tickets for Leicester away, Bournemouth at home, Arsenal away. The match day vlogs are going to be back, so you want to stick around for them, so hit the subscribe. Drop that like button because it gets us in the Newcastle algorithm. Get us on social media. And as I said, let me know in the comments who you'd like to see leave the football club, realistically. And I'll see you on the next video, Newcastle fans. Hopefully England can keep smashing it in the World Cup, and I'll keep the Newcastle content coming. Away the lads.